I need a drink.
Hi and welcome back to Real Reviews, where today I'm having a look at Richard Linklater's Blue Moon, which has been part of the selection for the London Film Festival this year. Stars Ethan Hawke, Margaret Qualley, Bobby Cannavale and Andrew Scott, and looks into the musical association between Rodgers and Hart. So let's dive into this and find out what all the fuss is about.
We write together for a quarter of a century, and the first show he writes with someone else is gonna be...
So Blue Moon is going to be unlike anything you have ever seen before when it comes to Richard Linklater. It is essentially a one-man band with Ethan Hawke playing Lorenz Hart at the epicenter of this thing. It's set in the bar of Sardi's on the opening night celebration of Oklahoma, where Rodgers and Hart has now become Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein, or Rodgers and Hammerstein. And it's the release of Oklahoma, which then went on to become one of the most famous and most successful musical theatre productions in Broadway history. And the thing is, Ethan Hawke really embraces this sort of like discarded composer. He was an alcoholic, he was a genius, but he was also very camp, very kitsch, very outspoken, with a sharp tongue and didn't really suffer fools, but he was also an incurable romantic. All of these things come through the performance which Hawke ultimately gives. Andrew Scott is part of the equation. He does play some sort of role in the film ultimately, as does Margaret Qualley, but ultimately also this film really belongs to Hawke, and it feels like a love letter to Broadway musicals, if nothing else. But there is a lot more below the surface that we need to explore, so let's dig a bit deeper.
For over 20 years, Hart and his partner Richard Rodgers created a string.
So audience going into this film need to know that there is an awful lot of dialogue. It is a very singular film in the respect that there are two actors most of the time just on screen. That's Cannavale and Hawke, playing this sort of like tag team, knocking it back and forth across the net to each other in terms of dialogue. Also, it does feel quite stagey. It feels very much like a stage performance almost, and Hawke treats it as such. It is through the jiggery pokery of digital effects. He's also lost a couple of inches, so he is doing not a Toulouse-Lautrec, but he is a somewhat shorter actor than normal. And he's embracing the campness. At the end of the day, whether Hart was a bisexual man or whether he liked ladies, it didn't really matter, I think, at that point to him what he liked. But the point is that culturally speaking in society, that thing was still illegal. It was frowned upon, even though it was an open secret amongst the Broadway fraternity, one would assume. But even that aside, it's a human frailty story. It explores the flaws of humanity. And the things we sacrifice sometimes in the search for something creative, something original. With great creativity comes something, equally, should we say, self-destructive in its own way. So there are lots of different things to explore within Blue Moon, which come through very much in that central performance from Hawke. So on that note, I'm going to dive into my rating. Let's do that.
Your work is brilliant. That's not the problem.
No, I'm not drinking with you, Larry. They should put my picture on that bottle. The whiskey that made Lorenz Hart.
So on all the evidence and the performances therein, Blue Moon, Richard Linklater's latest, which was at the London Film Festival this year, is going to get a 4 out of 5 on the big old 5 scale for me. It comes down to that tour de force performance from Ethan Hawke, I think, alongside a supporting cast, an ensemble which includes Bobby Cannavale, Margaret Qualley and Andrew Scott, and it really does bring a different tone. It's a different approach from Richard Linklater. It feels like a step up in terms of maturity, and it really feels like a true departure from the writer-director. So on that note, I'm going to dive into my trailer. Let's do that.
Or this girl.
You're going to introduce me to Richard Rodgers, right?
She's a girl. See, I always thought that your interests went more to
What do you think she sees in him? I think she recognizes she's being adored by one of the great appreciators.
And so it is, you've reached the end of another video review, this time for Blue Moon, which is written and directed by Richard Linklater, stars Andrew Scott, Ethan Hawke, Margaret Qualley and Bobby Cannavale. So this is a bit where I go, if you've liked the video, then give me a thumbs up. Failing that, you can always just drop a comment in the comment box below and I will respond. And finally, just subscribe so that every Tuesday and every Saturday when I drop another of these videos literally into your lap, you'll get a little notification you can pop in and watch or listen to as much or as little as you'd like, and then go about your day. In the meantime, check out the rest of the channel and maybe pop over to the Patreon page. Take care. Cheers now. Bye.